There's a space just outside of our reality, a labyrinth of dull yellow rooms, damp carpet, and the endless, maddening hum of fluorescent lights. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're investigating a massive cinematic and cultural anomaly. We are stepping into the backrooms. For true cinema fans, the 2026 release of the A24 film Backrooms wasn't just another horror movie. No, it was a literal descent into pure psychological terror. The core lore is just deeply unsettling. Think about it. The backrooms don't just trap you, they observe you. They remember you, but imperfectly. They construct these faulty, terrifying copies out of fragments of human memory. It's an environment that preys on your mind way before it ever physically threatens your body. But, before we unravel the dark, twisting architecture of the film's narrative, we've got to talk about a completely different kind of anomaly. Okay, let's dive into this. $81.4 million. That is what Backrooms pulled in domestically during a single opening weekend. And here's the kicker, you guys. It achieved this against a minuscule $10 million budget. Insane, right? Philo 1, the box office anomaly. This brings us to our first investigation phase. We're looking at a box office anomaly that completely redefined what was possible for prestige indie studio A24. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the disparity. Look at that $10 million budget crossed out and replaced by that massive opening weekend figure. A24 is, they're famous for art house dramas. Yet their biggest opening weekend in company history, literally more than tripling their previous record, didn't come from an award season drama. It came from a liminal space horror movie made for the price of a mid-budget television episode. It instantly made its director the youngest filmmaker ever to land a #1 movie at the North American box office. And this chart brilliantly captures the terrifyingly strong legs of the film. A big opening weekend is one thing, for sure, but this shows a movie that simply refused to fade. It crossed 100 million domestically in its first week. By month 1, it was past 200 million worldwide. And by week 6, it crossed 350 million. It became an absolute global phenomenon, dominating in markets like China, France, and Taiwan, and ultimately crossing well over $364 million worldwide. File 02, the psychological architecture. So how exactly did a movie about empty, yellow rooms succeed like this? Well, we have to examine the art itself. The film is an incredibly smart psychological allegory. We get this stark contrast between our protagonist's real life and the nightmare he enters. Clark owns this failing, down-market furniture store called Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire. He's divorced, he's drinking heavily, and he flat-out refuses to accept responsibility for his life's collapse, constantly casting himself as the victim in his therapy sessions. But contrast that pathetic, stagnant reality with the backrooms, or the complex. When he accidentally slips or no-clips into this dimension, it first seems like an escape. But man, it quickly becomes a physical manifestation of his own unresolved memory, trauma, and refused responsibility. And he is absolutely not alone down there. The film introduces us to still-life entities. Now, these aren't your standard movie monsters. They are imperfect, mimicking copies that the backrooms construct from the fragments of human memory it consumes. In one deeply unnerving scene, Clark, who has completely lost his mind at this point and fused with his pirate mascot persona, actually stabs one of these entities. But instead of blood, a pale, edible-looking substance pours out. It is such a horrifying, visceral reminder that these mimicking creatures were never truly alive to begin with. File 03, Constructing the Nightmare. Taking internet-born lore into prestige cinema, that is a massive undertaking. First, A24 grounded the horror with immense talent. They brought in Academy Award nominees Chiwetel Ejiofor to play the broken, resentful Clark, and Renate Reinsve as his therapist, Dr. Mary Klein. By casting serious, high-caliber actors, the studio gave a story born on YouTube incredible, intense, dramatic gravity and weight. And then, of course, there was the physical space itself. A24 didn't just rely on green screens for this. They built a massive, physically imposing 30,000 square foot practical set in Vancouver. It was just a giant maze of identical yellow-lit corridors. The crazy thing? It was so incredibly immersive and disorienting that the cast and crew reportedly got lost just walking through it during production. No way, right? File 04, the bedroom blueprint. Perhaps the most fascinating part of this explainer is tracing this massive hit back to its highly improbable source, a teenager on the internet. Just look at this absurdly fast production timeline. In January 2022, a 16-year-old named Kane Parsons uploaded a short, unsettling found footage video to his YouTube channel, Kane Pixels. it just exploded, kicking off a massive internet subculture around liminal spaces. Fast forward to February 2023, A24 and major producers were already developing a feature film adaptation with Parsons attached to direct. And by May 2026, it saw a wide, multi-million-dollar theatrical release. I mean, in 4 years, he went from a self-taught teen making videos in his bedroom to a record-breaking Hollywood director. Let's move to and see how this builds, going from the digital origin file to the final theatrical execution. What's so incredible is that Parsons didn't abandon his roots. He personally designed the movie's concept art using Blender, literally the exact same free 3D software he used in his bedroom to make his very first viral video, before handing it over to a production designer to build for real.
File 05, The Endless Expansion.
The lore of the backrooms is designed to be infinite, and the phenomenon continues to grow, leaving us with lingering, deeply unsettling mysteries. The film's momentum was so unstoppable that on July 3rd, just weeks after its initial release, A24 put it back in theaters. This Everything Must Go edition wasn't just a basic director's cut with deleted scenes. It featured roughly 16 minutes of brand new post-credits footage built entirely with 3D computer graphics, specifically to deepen the mythology ahead of a likely sequel. And that mythology leaves us with some terrifying, unresolved anomalies. At the film's climax, Dr. Mary Klein is supposedly rescued by researchers from the Async Institute who have been secretly studying this dimension. But her extraction is highly ambiguous. In the final moments, we see a mirror version of Mary's own childhood home located somewhere else deep inside the backrooms. And inside it sits a deformed simulacrum of Mary herself. The backrooms had already begun building a copy of her. So the crucial point is, we're left completely questioning if Mary ever actually escaped back to reality, or if the async interrogation room she's sitting in is just another false room generated by the complex. Which brings us to our final lingering thought. This explainer shows us how a teenager with a laptop, leveraging free 3D software, built an audience of millions before a single studio dollar was spent. And that grassroots internet fandom, it followed him straight into the cinema, completely bypassing and out-earning traditional prestige films. It proves that internet-native horror isn't just a stepping stone anymore, it's a destination. So as we look at the shifting landscape of modern cinema, we really have to ask, is internet-native lore the new, inescapable reality of Hollywood? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the backrooms. Stay curious.